But before we get into that, I just want to introduce our lovely panelists. If you just want to wave or shout out when I say your name. Nikita Khan, who is a visual development artist. There she is. Tiffany Lam right here, art director. Bobby Clayton, who is a previs modeler, right? Okay. Charlie Parisi, who is a storyboard artist. So, there you go. Paulette Emerson, the digital character development artist. Okay. And Gabe Lynn, who is head of story. These are all the people that made the movie that you love. And are we going to start with you?
Sure.
Okay, and we're going to start with Tiffany's presentation, and we will be joined by Woodrow White a little bit later. He will join us soon, and he is the lead character developer. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. I apologize. I did not rehearse this and just kind of threw these up really quickly. But it just wanted to show some artwork that was obviously done on the show, and a little bit about the process that made our show style so unique. All right. So obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys are fans of the franchise. That was always our North Star. We really, wanted to pay homage to the toy, the franchise, the shows, and just how silly it always was. And we wanted to bring it back to that time and ignore what Michael Bay did. And so early on, you laughed, but this was also our other North Star. We really, really studied these the way we studied masters, just the way, before we were taught in school, before we saw tutorials. I think there's yeah. So, bad anatomy, just like bad composition, and I say bad, but really it's something that was so charming and something that we really wanted to integrate into our style, and just a real energy that maybe is lost when we become students and we kind of get grilled down by all the rules. So this was some of our artwork, and we tried to integrate all those elements that we saw in the franchise and in these, unskilled art, and just like floating lines and trees that are more abstract and doesn't have to look realistic, and pepperoni slice being just quickly drawn in and not colored in. And so the looming question that was over our heads was, how do we translate this in 3D? Our production designer took it upon himself to learn Blender and did a test. And this was truly a breakthrough moment for the team. We didn't really know how we would translate until we saw this. And, the floating lines, the smudges, just not having really clean edges and silhouettes, and not feeling the need to completely render it realistically. This was another one that was a little further along. The smudges that were just, floating, really scratchy marks. I think we've all been told, those who are artists in school, draw a line with just one stroke. We're like, F that. We're gonna go, we're gonna make scratchy marks. And so this was a diagram that I made that would be used for the buildings and the environments. And it was basically a way to figure out, when we get into X, Z, Y space, the further the building is, the more abstract and loose it gets. So as you can see here, a lot of the line work is doing most of the work, and it's more tight on the bottom. And we kind of wanted to use that throughout. So this was some of the buildings that our artists done, and I think Nikita did a few of them. And it's charming, it's very observed, and it feels like Alphabet City, but we just needed that plus factor that made our style more integrated. So again, like loose line work and smudges and more abstractness at the top. The windows are more loose compared to the ones at the bottom. So I'm going to quickly now just scroll through a bunch of other images that our team made, and yeah, just keep all that information in mind. Oh, and character, Woodrow is not here yet, but he was our lead character designer, and hopefully you get to ask him a bunch of questions later. But as you can see on the left, this is more of your like typical character design. He's cute, Splinter's cute, but we wanted that real hand-touched, like more heavy-handed drawing. Like, you know, we would go in and we would tell our vendor, like, we need to see those scratches floating off, and if we don't see it at this point, then when the lighting and color and comp is applied, then it's totally lost. So every meeting, it was just like more scratchiness, more messiness, and imperfection. This was an early pass by Yashar as well, and this was the final that our vendor from Mikros did. As you can see, like the modeling and the texture, all those elements that we were just talking about it's integrated on the characters, props, environments. This is by Arthur Fong, our director. I think this was like his first attempt to paint the characters in our show style, and he crushed it. Woodrow, you know, Woodrow's not your conventional character designer. He doesn't come from animation. And I think it says a lot, like, you know, just seeing these images, like who would design? Like, he must be insane. And a bunch of environments from a lot of our artists. This is the previous was by Dustin. This is by Garrett Lee, Kellen Jett. And we grounded the movie by like really observing. I'm sorry, I went through that really quickly. I'm gonna slow down. Yeah, just trying to make things feel really observed and cluttered the way people really are. New York, obviously, is a huge character in our movie, and we wanted to portray it in a realistic way, not just like the fancy glamour that it's usually portrayed in. It's by Alger. I think Alger. Do we know Alger Town? I think this is Alger. This was the turtle sewer room, bedroom. This is Arthur Fong. He's our master vehicle designer, and yeah, as you can see, those elements are really floating blue, like just the colors. We're trying to be really playful in a way that like kids usually are. You know, they're not trying to make things look realistic. Like, there's no logic to this. Like, it just really doesn't make sense. Also, fun fact, if you pause in the movie, this guy changes sizes throughout the movie. Like, it was supposed to fit in a van. We shrunk it down like 3 times because logistically it wouldn't fit in there. And then here it's totally blown up. But, you know, who cares? Like, it's for the story's sake and not to make it realistic. TCRI was really inspired by the old toy sets of the franchise and also the 90s movies. I really pushed the perspective here so that it just felt really bizarre and funny, but like this gets so tiny, you know, unrealistic way, and then it just gets massive. And just, you know, all your like sci-fi tropes, like glowing balls and stuff. Do you guys remember that store?
Sure.
What's that?
Sharper Image.
Yes, sure. Yeah. FX was also another character in our movie because this was another, like a really big way to combine 2D and 3D elements. If we had CGI 3D elements, then it would have just made everything look really real. And so our vendors took our art and really went in there and like hand drew all of the, like if there was a little like a fire thing happening, they would hand draw the movements just the way you would in a 2D movie or a TV show. And that was part of the reason why they really stood out on screen. The color keys, these are just a few of them. We also learned that vendors have the technology to control light and color and the way it hits a character environment so specifically that we realized that this no longer needs to be inspiration. They can match it one for one. So if it didn't make sense, you know, there were times when they would say, oh, but if there's a light here, if there's a pink light here, then it would hit these characters with a pink light. And we just said, we don't care. we like the way this color key looks, so just match it. And eventually, like, we really started this strong partnership, and when they realized that this was all purposeful. So as you can see here, left is art. The right side is screenshots from the film itself. It's almost, you know, one for one, and something that we're really proud of. And I think that's the last of my presentation. Thank you.
Whoever wants to get on next. Bobby?
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and show the video of all of these scenes that I worked on in Previs first, and then go through some individual images just to show the overall process for Previs. So these are just a few of the environments that I did early on in the movie. So the big thing with Previs is essentially it's the step between the design, a lot of the artwork that Tiffany just showed, and taking that and translating into 3D as the first pass that someone is going to see, executives, higher ups, see what this is going to translate into. And it's also going to be used by animators who are going to do Previs scenes to give a style of the animation to the overseas studios. The big thing with all of this artwork is that it has to look like this in the Maya viewport. So none of these are renders, it just has to be able to load, play quickly. So there was a lot of just trying to figure out that style in 3D, so there were brush strokes along the lights, there were bars that were just textures, simple displacement or simple textures for bricks, just anything to indicate the look in a quick way. A lot of it ended up borrowing from the actual artwork, like this artwork on the rug down here is just someone's painting projected on a rug. In this first set here, the Turtles lair was the first set that I worked on, where we tried to figure out, like, for example, the porta potty that showed up in the end of the movie. How do we have this function but still have perspective not quite work correctly? How does the wonky work when it's still a functional porta potty? The same with the Turtles' sewers, which was a big part of their home. What does that look like? What does the early moments in their lives look like? The school that they showed up in at the end of the movie was a big set that I ended up working on. That was going to be a bigger part of the story, so it was, I think I have here, a full, sorry, this is scrolling, the full city block of where they were going to be interacting and what that would look like, and what those buildings would look like. There were early tests where we would rig the buildings to be able to wonk in whatever direction we wanted them to, just so that the animators could make the shot work for them. This particular corner set was just a concept. I think it was actually the first set after the lair, just to see what the city would look like. It was the first time I like butted heads almost with the idea of the style and what I'm used to in production modeling, where everything has to be modeled just so. I said, well, the perspective doesn't work. And the director just said, okay, let's just make it work. So it was a combination of that and taking the work from Yashar, the production designer, which Tiffany showed earlier, and then expanding on that throughout the entire set. How much could we get away with in previs that would be easily identifiable, but not so heavy that the animators couldn't work with it? In this particular set was another one, I believe this might have been Kellen's work. So it just directly projected onto the screen, but then started to make actual geometry to indicate light, which is going all the way through the bridge. There's a concept art in the background that is just the entire background painting. The simplest characters for humans. And yeah, that is essentially the previous process for environments. It is just taking the original designs, getting a first look so that they can see what it's going to look like before it actually gets shipped off to our vendor studios to make the final product.
Hi, friends. How many of you guys are digital artists? Sweet. Welcome, my people. So, I'll show you. Not that 2D is not fantastic. We need you guys more than anything, but I come from completely digital. Sorry, I don't really know what I'm doing here. So, my name is Paulette Emerson, and I was the lead character development artist in digital. And so what I would do is I would take Woodrow's beautiful drawings and I would make them into 3D before we sent them out to our vendor. And it was truly one of the most challenging and probably the most rewarding experiences because it's not every day you have to break all the rules of modeling. I wish there was a way I could show this to you guys without like full screen, but I don't. Oh, here we go. So here are the turtles. And when I joined the team, we had a previous artist. His name was Christian. Can't pronounce his last name. H. Starts with an H. And he had developed, he had developed Michelangelo, Mikey, Raph, and Leo preliminary. And then I took over, and that was it. I did 90% of the character development before we sent it out to the vendor, which was a huge undertaking. I got Yashar's artwork, and the first thing I thought was, man, I love this line work. We got to get this onto the characters. And, okay, how do I get back?
Do you press the escape?
Is it escape? Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry.
Paulette's very efficient with computer.
Yeah.
She's really, really good. It's tab?
No.
Oh, good. Art station with that.
Oh, that's
Oh.
Thank you
Oh,
so much.
I see.
I swear, I'm a lot better at this than
She is. I've seen her work.
So here's Leo. Oh, I guess every time you, okay, I get it now. All right. So here's Leo. So this was a terrible one. It's Apple. It's Apple. So anyway, but this was Leo, and as you can see, I wanted to put in as much line work as possible. So all of these lines that you see on this character, they're all digital. They're all line work. None of these characters were symmetrical, so I didn't even bother. Like, I would build the initial symmetry and then break it entirely. So here's just like the model you can see without the line work, and then the line work. Raph has a lot of it, you can see that. So you can see all this line work. He was a lot of fun. Let's see. Man, this looks finicky. Here's Mikey. I added color. And it was great because I love working with Jeff. Jeff Rowe is our director. And one of the best parts about working with Jeff is that he was one of those directors that when you had what he wanted, he was like, yes, this is amazing. And he had all the excitement in the world, and nothing, I'm not kidding you, what makes an artist feel better than your director geeking out about your work. So that was always such a pleasant experience. So those were the turtles. They were pretty easy. I mean, not easy, but then we came into like the harder stuff where it came to like how we did humans. So for instance, with April, all those little curly cues and the floating lines and everything, that was definitely challenging, especially making it in 3D. So this is the artwork that Woodrow did, and this is the model. And then this is what went into the movie. And so it was nice because all these files were sent to the vendor, who then made them production models and got them animating. Here's April. And then my favorite character. So, a little funny story to tell you guys about this one was, initially, he wasn't our bad guy. Initially, it was supposed to be Baxter Stockman, right? That's how you say it. And what was really cool was I got this drawing, and I was like, man, this guy is so ugly. This is not, I come from like Leica and DreamWorks, where everything is so pretty and symmetrical and adorable. And, you know, my instructor always told me, Paulette, if you can figure out how to sell cute, you'll be a millionaire. And this was not cute. So I was like, I am not going to be a millionaire with this. But then I presented it to Jeff, and he literally screamed with so much joy, took a picture of it with his cell phone, and then he sent it to our executive producer, who is Seth Rogen, and they rewrote the script to make him the bad guy because they love the design so much. So thank you, Woodrow, for that. And then, so that was my feather in my cap moment. It was one of those moments where you're like, yeah, I did that. Here he is with his wings down, so you can see all the like cool asymmetrical work. And then here's my second favorite guy, who is Baxter. So this is the 2D artwork, and then I wanted to make it 3D. And so I wanted, my thing was, I really wanted to put as much 2D into 3D as I possibly could. So like all of these individual lines, this is where we developed our hair. Initially, we didn't know our hair was gonna look like this. And when Jeff and Yashar and Arthur looked at this was before Tiffany joined us, they looked at this and they're like, this is how we're gonna do hair. We're gonna send this to the vendor and this is how we're gonna do hair, excuse me. And so I said I was sorry to the vendor and we sent their files to them. So that was that. So this is, without color. And then this guy was just phenomenal. So this is all 3D. The only thing that isn't 3D is these little smudges. Photoshop, thank you. But aside from that, again, it went back to, I wanted to put as much of that line work that Jeff and Yashar and everybody loved into the models as much as possible. And so I did. And here's the back side. Isn't it cute? And I had creative liberty. It was a lot of fun. But like here you can see, this is without the color. It's not as flashy, but Jeff really loved to see stuff without color because then he could see, oh, look at all those lines. Those are going to be 3D. So you can see, so he could see what was going to be 3D and what wasn't. Another fun Woodrow design was this one. And when I say Woodrow design, I need to give credit to some of the other concept artists that helped. I don't know who colored this.
I think Sean.
Sean. So some people, there were other artists who would color them. Sean, I don't know his last name.
Sylvester, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Tiffany, you got this.
Yeah, Woodrow would design them, and because he didn't come from animation, they were usually flat like this. Then Sean would paint them with lighting and color to really bring out the form of the character. That would help you, Paulette, a little bit more.
Yeah, Sean was my hero because once he put color on it, I was just like, this is great because now I can add depth and color into the characters. This one was a fun one. He's so cute. So this was Genghis Frog. Again, I wanted to, all of those like little bits, there we go. You can see these are all floating bits. This was all done in 3D. Man, I need to go back and polish this stuff. But like even like the little curls on his face. But everything was asymmetrical. And I think that was the most challenging bit about it, was there was just, everything was wonky. And you were so desperate to like not make it wonky. And then Mondo Gecko was a fan favorite as well, studio favorite. This was the design Woodrow gave me, and I don't know if Sean colored this one.
No, that's just Woodrow.
That's okay, so this was just a Woodrow piece. So in this case, I wanted to show the vendor and also Jeff, like, hey, this is an initial 3D render, this is a little bit of shading with the render, and this is a flat render. And this was definitely more of the look that we wanted for the characters. We wanted this really flat looking thing. And we were able to do it with line work, so you can see a little bit of the line work here, digital line work, and then the rendering. Oop, don't do that, Paulette. There we go. And yeah, I think he's cute. I'm gonna approve. Oh, sorry. The Rat King was a lot of fun as well. This guy, he didn't make it into our movie, but he became a hologram, which I guess that's something, which was really cool. And I don't know, maybe if there's like a second or third or fourth rendition, you never know these days, then maybe he'll show up then. But he was a lot of fun. And come on, this time it's getting embarrassing. Oh, and then this was the initial Cynthia Ultron. We ended up changing her hair for the better, I think. I think like this is cool and all, but I think the second pass came out much nicer. And this was the early rendition of, and this is my last piece I'll show you guys, was, excuse me, was Make a Mutant. I hated myself every single day working on this thing. Because this is about 25 million polygons. And each one of these horses were modeled separately. Like, so there were like 6, what I did, and I advise anyone who ever needs to do something this particular ever again is, I just did like 4 of them, and then I smashed them together, and I like changed them up every so often. Like you can see, they're in there, and but yeah. And then this is like this would be my previs, where I'd be like, this, I want this shape. And if you know anything about digital, it's all about the silhouette. And so what I would do is I would always initially model out the silhouette, what it was going to look like, all ugly and with no form whatsoever, no eyes, no nothing like that. And then I would go in and be like, oh, the eye needs to go here. And I always referred back to the reference work and try to get it as close to this kind of stuff as possible. And have fun. So, anyway, that was it.
I'm Nikita. I'm one of the V-Step artists on the team. We open the slide too. So I'm more on the earlier part of the movie. So a lot of work you see is the first script of the film, and which involve a lot of exploration of like New York City, and also more focus on the school part. Is Tiffany there? So yeah, this is one of my first piece of art painting I've done when I joined the production. And at this time, we were exploring the style. It's not really what you see in the final movie. It's, I would say, more tight, but you can see the concept of high school students drawing more loose. There's some lines floating here and there. But at the same time, compared to the end style, there's still like a bit of difference, right? And this is actually based on Woodrow's concept. I was tightening up with more details. A lot of time in the production, we work on top of each other's artwork and inspired by each other, which I think is really cool. And this is early concept for the chop shop. I had so much fun with this piece because the crazy lighting and all these like elements in this piece. Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite paintings that I've done on the production. And then this is the New York City exploration. After I joined the production, Kellen and Garrett also joined the team, and they definitely bring in a lot of inspiration and also a lot of other V-Step artists. So now I would say the style is more that compared to when I first joined in. Of course, Yusha did a really cool blender turnaround with the pops. That's when everybody was like, wow, that's the style we are going for. And in the production, a lot of time we do rough inlines or like this type of thumbnails to get feedback from our directors, and then to see which one to go to move on to. And this is a very early concept for the switch. And also, like this part, like the school restroom, was not in the final movie, but it's also like something really fun to do in the beginning. Also, one of my favorite pieces, I never thought painting toilet would be so much fun. And these are the concepts I showed the art director to get feedback. Really rough concept is not something that looking good, but it's more for idea communication. Also, this was one of the part in the early script of interrogation. It also didn't make it into a movie, but I thought it's pretty cool to have them included. And here are the props, which I really enjoy to do because if you think about it, environment painting is a lot of props together. But when you design one prop, you can really focus on it and really explore like what you can do with just one thing. And you can see the style. Personally, I had quite a lot of struggle working on this movie. This was my first painting job, I would say, because previously I was working as a background designer on other production. And I think with Tiffany, Arthur, the two art director, and also our PD, Yusha's help, they really helped us to guide through and find how to like paint in the style we want to go through. That's the pizza Tiffany show, and I had so much fun with these props because like something in this production I felt really grateful for is like I constantly get pushed. So if I turn in something, everybody will constantly encourage to push it further to add in the characteristic, not just the paint style, but like how to communicate and storytelling for each piece we are doing. So you can see all this like drawing and exploration to show the character of the turtle, even some small pop like this. So this is the final, some of the final decision. And these are some exploration for Baxter's basement. At the beginning, there was a different area for the concept, so it's not really in basement. We were thinking about school bus, like abandoned warehouse. There were also some concept painting done by Woodrow, right, for the warehouse, which was really cool. Yeah, this was so much fun to just like get down some crazy ideas. And here are some props. I'm just gonna scroll through this. These are so much fun. We got the storyboard like this, and yeah, the sponges. Who did this?
We know who boarded that?
I can't see from here.
It's the bathtub scene with the kid.
Oh, that's Hannah.
Hen.
Yeah, it's so cute. Yeah, it's so cute when I got the storyboard. You can see it's like not really finely rendered. It's more like scribbles, line work to indicate the form change and everything, the details. And there's also the surface art that we do clouds for the buildings, for explaining the material to the artist, 3D artist, how to indicate all the texture and the details. But yeah, these are so much fun to really like get out of getting everything super clean. Instead of that, we are doing everything more loosely, and it is a lot of fun. Some more props. Dumpster food. But yeah, this was April's camera. This was one of the concept of the syringe gun. I don't think he made it into a movie, this one. But yeah, these are some concept work I've done for the movie. Thank you guys.
Woodrow White. He's here.
Hi, we're just going to use Instagram today. Here I am. Hi, I'm Woodrow White, the lead character designer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. Let's start at the beginning. So, this was the very first piece of work I did for the movie, and this was August 2020. Jeff had contacted me about doing a Ninja Turtles film, and it was a pandemic, and I had literally nothing to lose, and it sounded like the coolest job ever. So I said, hell yeah. And his first assignment for me was just to paint the turtles hanging out in New York City, just being teens, and I came up with this, and Jeff really loved it, and he said if we could get the rest of the movie to look like this, we'll hit a home run. And you can kind of see the sort of primordial DNA of our final film in this image, and it's one of my favorite pieces I did for the film. And this was like, again, back in early development before we had any sort of clear indication of like any sort of roadmap or anything, and I had not yet been designated character designer, so I was still doing a bunch of like things here and there, just drawing things, showing what our world might look like. Here's another one. It's the turtles hanging out, watching a movie under the bridge. Again, another favorite of mine. Turtles on the subway. People really like this one. Let's see here. And so here's another really early one as well. This is like them going home after a long night of crime fighting, taking the train home, subway surfing, which apparently has become a very dangerous hobby. So we nixed that from the film. Here's another. We were talking about the turtles in high school, so this is like a yearbook, one of like those awkward yearbook photos, like computer science, and so I was like trying to emulate the look of like flash photography, like awkward yearbook flash photography, like the red eyes. These early artworks are like combination, like me doing like gouache paintings and then like going over them digitally in Procreate on my iPad, which was really fun, and it like really lent itself to the final like handmade quality of the film. That was just me like sketching with colored pencils and gouache paint. You can see Donnie in the back here. He's like kind of surprised. So we're gonna be going back and forth, time traveling a little bit here. And then I started doing some vehicles as well. Vehicles were a very early thing in development. How the cars were gonna look. So like just drawing how cars. It's me trying to draw cars, and my failures kind of developed into our overall aesthetic. Taxis. And then these are really fun. These are like my very brief time doing props. I was doing fire hydrants and mailboxes. I think Yashar, the genius he is, he took like this mailbox and like made it like 4 times sketchier and rougher, and then made it 3D, and did it. Oh yeah, okay. You should. I'm a little late. But yeah, like that really blew our minds. I remember the first time he showed us that. And so yeah, and then the very first 2 characters I did were Bebop and Rocksteady. This was before we knew what the film looked like, and Jeff was just like, Bebop and Rocksteady, go! And I drew these 2 guys, and he said like, yeah, this is exactly how they're going to look. And I had just met Jeff, and he sounded like a really cool guy, but like I wasn't sure how how honest that statement was, and it turned out to be very true, because like they look almost just like this in the final film. And yeah, so like with the help of our turnaround artists like Justin and Adele and Paulette, then we were able to translate what would have been an impossible 2D drawing into 3D. And yeah, I was really happy with these 2 guys. And then here's Splinter. This is where we landed on Splinter. I can show you some early Splinters here. This is more like me actually like drawing on paper and watercolor gouache back when I had the time at the beginning. There's a digital. Another one. Yeah, Splinter was really fun, although he was very hard to crack. I was basing him a lot off of my girlfriend's dog. She's this like Chihuahua mix, and she's very hairy. She has these like crazy eyebrows, so that's where those like kind of antenna-like eyebrows come from. We wanted to make him really like dad-like. That was Jeff and Evan and Seth's idea, was that like he was gonna be like this like neurotic dad, and so like I was trying to mix that with like the kind of wise ninja master that we know Splinter as originally, and kind of meshing the 2. So he's got kind of like this Kataginu costume on, but it's also like it's made from like, you know, discarded bathrobe, and he's got like a stained t-shirt underneath. So it's like casual ninja master. Here's Baxter. This is the Baxter we landed on. And Baxter was like one of the hardest characters to crack, mainly because he had gone through so many different versions in the script. Originally, he was going to be the main villain, like Paulette said, and he was going to have a different backstory. So, like, he was going to be a rich CEO, tech CEO initially, and then like he became like a disgruntled school teacher. Here's his like tech CEO phase. This was a very early Procreate drawing I did. More like crazy chemistry teacher. I was aiming to jam in as much foreshadowing as I could with Baxter being this, if you know from the comics or cartoons, this fly mutant, and so I was trying to express that in, you know, his apron being tied back like little wings, you know, the green in his apron, the red safety goggles. Just saying, yeah, this guy's gonna become a fly by the end of the movie. Here's some like Jeffrey Dahmer sort of, you know, like inspo. A little bit of Tyler Perry from the 2016 Turtles thrown in. A little bit of Terrence McKenna, sort of like red spectacles. Again, like fly imagery. Yeah, I can see my arrow. more tech CEO. We were really inspired by the fashion of Young Thug right here. Like he's a really cool character. And then another chemistry teacher. He went to ZIT, Zeta Institute of Technology. I don't know, ZIT. Just going through them now. Here's Mondo Gecko, fan favorite. Mondo was a favorite of mine. I remember, playing with the different versions. This was like more faithful to the original Mondo. Kind of a skater dude. And, my aim was just to get him goofier and goofier and more lovable. This one's a little terrifying. I think here's like Venice Beach Mondo Gecko. And yeah, a lot of these, I felt like I wasn't really getting anywhere, and then I finally landed on this. I took a completely different direction, and then I landed immediately on this one, and I think it just goes to show that sometimes you gotta dig really deep in character design and in art, and sometimes you might be digging towards nothing, but then you turn around and you dig a little in another area and you instantly strike gold. So yeah, that's Mondo Gecko. Here's Ray Fillet, and Ray Fillet, oppositely, I think I did him pretty much in one go. I wanted to do something very different from the original Ray Fillet, and kind of make him tougher and meaner. He's kind of like this lovable looking superhero character if you've seen the original Ray Fillet. And here I wanted to make him kind of like this dangerous Navy SEAL commando. And I showed this to Jeff and he was like, perfect, okay, we're done, next. Which is great because Jeff, he knows what he likes. And sometimes he'll show you that you've struck gold with, and you might not even know it. Here's excuse me. Here's some paintings I did for the Donnie's fantasy sequence about bringing in Superfly and becoming heroes. These were just, So I think it was it Charlie who storyboarded? So Charlie storyboarded this sequence, and I kind of based my scene paintings heavily off of his compositions. And for this, we wanted to make it very high school drawing, very amateur high school student notebook sketches. And I was also inspired by old comic books and Japanese paper theater. Them turtles all right. So that was fun. And then this French animation house, Squiz Studios, did the final animation, hand drawn. By the way, they hand drew that sequence on paper. And here's Superfly, Baxter Stockman originally. This was back when Baxter was going to mutate into the giant fly. And we went through a lot of different versions of this as well. I wanted to be as grotesque and scary as possible. But you know, it took a lot of digging, but like I'm really satisfied with how this turned out. Here's some, back when I was dabbling in a little set design, I was working in the Turtles headquarters. This was like a much more spacious version, a little bit more in tune with like the original movies, the original 90s films, that flavor. This is their bedroom, which you kind of see in the final film, the like sort of bunk bed, hollowed out pipe configuration, and then like Leo's little cot area here. And here's just like a pan of the living spaces, which then Alger Tam, another one of our artists, did a just masterful job at like rendering this and sculpting it out, and then like just adding so much to it. Leatherhead. Leatherhead was fun. This is another version. This is an early version of Leatherhead. I don't like this one. This one was fun. I tried to keep the mutants as animalistic as possible. I find it a lot funnier than more humanoid mutants like you might see in other cartoons. I just think it's way funnier for something that looks more like an alligator than a human to be holding a shotgun. I don't know, something about like an alligator with a shotgun is really scary, but also really funny as well. Here's Cynthia Utram. This is where we landed, and here's some variations. I wanted her to look as inhuman as possible, for reasons I won't discuss, but you know, she was supposed to like stand out amongst the other human characters as odd. You know, our humans already look very odd, but she had to be extra odd. I really like this one. This one was fun. Here's the Mega Mutants. We called him Mimu in the office. This was right before the final Mega Mutant, where we had the genius idea of merging Superfly into the final monster. So originally it was just going to be a separate entity minus Superfly of all these animals. And these were like some very early sketches, like from a few years ago, where, you know, Jeff just told me Seth and Evan want a giant monster made of a bunch of animals, and I was like, okay, let's try these. And a lot of inspirations came from like the painter Giuseppe Arcamboldo and the video game Katamari Damacy, just like this idea of like a entity made up of smaller creatures. I knew I wanted a giant whale as the center because the whale could provide a huge hulking mouth. And there's some alternative limbs. These are way more complicated. Oh boy. I mean, Paulette described doing those legs. Could you imagine doing? No. Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, we had instead of chimps, we had gorillas for arms, we had orcas for arms, you name it. We had reptile legs, we had sea animal arms. Yeah. Oh.
Jeff's goal was to give kids nightmares.
Yes. Which I appreciate because I grew up with films like that, where like the kids' films would keep you up at night. These are like some very early versions of the Turtles, which I'm glad we did not use, because speaking of being kept up late at night, this was like early on in production where we hadn't nailed down an aesthetic, and I was kind of trying to reinvent the wheel here, And thankfully, though, like I think some of the shape language, which you know, if I could take one thing away from these, I do like their shapes. I don't love their eyes or mouth or anything else, but just their head shapes I thought were pretty cool. And one of our artists, Maxime Mary, translated these into what would later become our final turtles. So you can kind of see like the blockiness of Michelangelo's head here kind of found its way into later versions. But big props to Maxime Mary and also Yashar for our final turtles. Here are some gangsters. There's Normal Nate, Bald Bronson, we got Toupee Tom. These guys were really fun. It's always funny. It's always really fun to do, you know, movie goons. And I was taking a lot of inspiration from crime films. Toupee Tom, I was looking at the shirts of Furio from The Sopranos. I think he's a style icon. And I was watching some British gangster films, and I really liked their like tracksuits. And then, you know, Normal Nate, I was just trying to make the most normal looking, sinister, yet sinister guy you could imagine. More gangsters, Bad Bernie and Fat Frank. I think Adele might have done the body here, and then I kind of added the color, and I did the head here for this guy. Here's some animals. This is like Splinter's enemies. The dogs. You got a raccoon. You got this. I don't think this guy made it into it, but he was fun. You got like a line cook. And then you have Kevin, his friend, the roach. I was looking at like dozens of images of squashed roaches. I really wanted to make it extra yucky. It's April's moped. This was fun. Some more beasts. Horse. One horse. You know, I didn't really grow up drawing horses, so this was like my first time at like tackling drawing a horse. Gotta tell you, it's really hard. Giraffe. Some elephant. A lot of these didn't make it into the final, but they were still like, you know, a joy to. They were great challenges, you know, because I had never drawn a giraffe before, really. There's some chimps. Grizzly bear. Here's some TCRI henchmen. Utrom's minions. Very cyberpunk. I was looking at Johnny Mnemonic for this. I love that aesthetic. Here's an early, I think this is in the book actually, Splinter eating with the turtles in his like day glow. His like day glow, like sewer bachelor pad. A lot cleaner. I just think he was a really big like otaku at this, you know, like just loved like, you know, samurai statues and rice paper doors. Here's some goons, the like ice cream truck goons. These guys are really fun. Here's a Ramirez, who I think, someone asked if he was called Spider, and I think he might have been changed to the name Spider, but he's like Utrom's right-hand man. Some news anchors. We went with this one at the end here, but these were more like Fox News kind of inspired. Yeah. Here's Scale Tail. Some high school students.
Woodrow, do you know if Brock made it to the movie?
Oh, yeah, no, he did. Yeah. This guy here. So, this guy here was a very early high school character. He was going to be a character with speaking lines, and then he kind of became one of the generic models for background characters. I think you see this archetype like a few dozen times. He's in the Chop Shop. The triplets, yeah. But they really like this guy's face. So, like,
If saving money, you just
Yeah.
reuse model the kind of.
yeah.
Yeah, he was the first character in all outside the Turtles.
Yeah. Got some mutant babies. These were a delight. So I had to, for the flashback sequence, I had to imagine what my mutant designs looked like as toddlers, and this is what I came up with. As you can see here, there's baby Ray Fillet. Note he has two eyes, not one. Something happens between then and now. It's Bebop. Adorable. He's got like a little troll hair. It's a Rocksteady. It's baby Mondo. Little baby Raver. Leatherhead. Wingnut. And Genghis Frog. Well, whoop. And Scumbug. Here's some guys, some faces. We were trying to craft the character who would rescue Splinter. Who was supposed to he was supposed to be like the most like New York-y looking guy we could come up with for that scene. We landed on B, but I wanted to make some really like New Yorker-ish characters for that sequence. And Kevin Eastman actually voiced that character who helps Splinter. Oh shoot, am I going over time? Oh, sorry guys. Okay, here's Genghis Frog. Badoop, 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 badoop. There we go. Scumbug. And then here's a very like early animation test. The first animation test we did, I designed the background for this, and Wingnut, and there you go. Thank you, everybody. Charlie.
Well, why don't you talk about the shots, the storyboards? Yeah.
All right, we're going to go into our Q&A now. Charlie won't be spared question. Can we get the lights back on? Do you want to see us? Here we go. It's like after a school presentation. I mean, I guess for all of you, how did this process kind of challenge what you knew about? I mean, I know Woodrow, this is your first movie, right? But
Yeah.
like, how did it challenge the normal process of design and sort of filmmaking that you had up until this point? Because it seems very different, or maybe it's not.
I'm gonna let Gabe and Charlie speak since they're here, and they should
Yeah.
What was the question?
Oh my God. I said, how did this process sort of challenge what typical productions are like? Because obviously it seemed like they were trying very different things.
I think for story, it was pretty similar, but I think the leadership was very strong, and they had a very strong vision when I came in, and we were working during the pandemic, so we were all working from home at the time. Things were like different in that way, but I was lucky to join the crew with a bunch of people I worked with in the past, so it was like, even though we were so distant, it felt like I already knew the people, and we had a good communication from the start. And I think what maybe differed than other productions was like Jeff's vision was very strong, and he was able to quickly change it into making the story better and stronger. And I remember in like January of 2022, we had like a cut of the film, and it was like going in one direction with like the high school and all that stuff, and then we sat down and Jeff was like, listen, we're almost done with this film, but we're going to rewrite it, like a major rewrite, because of these reasons. The characters, like, their goals were to get to high school, and they got that in Act 1, so the story was like pretty much resolved, or what they wanted. So taking that risk to rewrite the entire story that late in the game was like very unusual and a challenge that we were up for, and I felt that with Jeff behind the decision making, it really helped make this film a lot stronger than the previous versions. So yeah, it's cool.
Gabe, do you want to talk about those previous versions at all?
I don't know.
I don't think we're allowed to, mainly because there's stuff that we might still use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Woodrow, you don't have a picture of Shredder up here, or we didn't look at it at least, but Jeff has blamed you in the past for making him come back to do another movie because your Shredder design was so cool.
Oh, really?
Do you?
I don't have it with me.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, you want to talk about what it was like designing that character and like?
For Shredder?
Yeah.
I mean, I did a couple of versions, and then Justin did a couple of versions, and then Yashar, I think, did that over the shoulder you see in the final film. But yeah, I think each and every one of us, we all had a lot of power in this film as artists. And if we brought something new to the table, Jeff would really embrace it. And that's why he was such a fun director to work with, is that he really valued our ideas and opinions.
Do you feel like you're spoiled now?
Oh.
This being your first movie? Okay.
100% spoiled, yeah. Very spoiled.
What was everybody's sort of knowledge and love of the original property before jumping on?
I live under a rock. I'm convinced of it. I know very little about pop culture. I'm the most uncool person in the movie. So when they asked me to join Turtles, I was like, I didn't even know people still watch this. Like, this is like, the last time I ever saw a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I was like 7 years old, and that was the last of it. And so when my friend came up to me, she said, hey, do you want to work on this movie? I was just like, what? And she told me, she's like, it looks like Beavis and Butthead. I was like, all right, I have to Google this. So I Googled that and I looked at it and I was just like, sure, why not?
So you didn't know Ninja Turtles, you didn't know Beavis and Butthead either?
Well, I mean, I only knew of like a very old memory because
Right.
it's just like I only remember seeing those things when I was much, much younger. Sometimes we romanticize these things, and sure enough, when I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, wow, you know? But yeah, I honestly didn't know any of these mutant characters. So I only knew the 4 turtles. I didn't know anything else. So that was part of the best part. I think every time I got one of the drawings from Woodrow, I was just like, this is the coolest character ever. I knew nothing about the character. And it was really fun and refreshing in that sense.
Yeah, do we have any like hardcore fans on this table?
I don't know if I'm a hardcore fan, but I think it was the first memory of a movie I watched was the first Turtles.
The live action one?
Yeah, the live action one. I was in like a daycare, and I remember watching the intro to it, and it's like burned in my memory. So I think it's the first film I remember. It's very special to me in that way. And I held it close for my childhood and then let it go for a while, until now.
Yeah, I was the same. I think I remember watching the 90s film, and I kind of put it back into my dark like memory, like, oh, I don't need to watch it again. But I was hired on, and I was like, I should do some research, watch it again, and was like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
This is the craziest movie, and it's pretty bad, like voice act, like the. But then when they pitched me the movie and they showed me the artwork, I'm like, I get it. And yeah, I was a little self-conscious about not being like a diehard fan or knowing that much about it. But I think there were a lot of us like that on the team, and it was kind of, we were seeing it with fresh eyes and bringing our take and our observations into it. And I think all of it was valuable, whether or not we were fans or not.
Tiffany, you talked about not being sure that you were not replicating anything from the Michael Bay movies. And I feel like for students, maybe, you know, learning from things that you don't like is just as important as learning from things that you do. And I was wondering, like, why was that something that you wanted to stay away from? Was it the bulkiness of the character? Like, what was, and that goes the same for everybody. If you were consciously aware of the Bay movies and stayed away from them for whatever reason.
Yeah, I saw the like advertisement for it, and I said, not watching that. But so I never watched it, but I do know. I mean, Jeff was very like, he drilled it in all of us. We are not making that movie because it felt very far from the the true characters of who the Turtles were. They were supposed to be teenagers. They're not supposed to be these like bulky fighting men that don't really look like turtles either. And yeah, it was more than just not that Michael Bay movie, but it was like trying to stay away from the tropes of most conventional animation movies in general. Just away from like that perfect bubbly character, right, with the eyes and just going all out on every character design and like making their like we were taught silhouettes. Evil is triangle and cute is round and bubbly, you know, and we were like, we're just unlearning all of that for this.
So interesting. I mean, he talked about how everybody wanted to be sort of in the headspace of a teenager. So was it fun going back to your teenage years and tapping into that energy? No. Woodrow wanted to stay as far away from his teenage self as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the fun part was Googling teenage drawings.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something endearing about it because I could definitely speak for myself when I say this. When I was a teenager, I suck at drawing. I still suck at drawing. I am not an artist in that sense, in any sense of that word. I went with my strengths, right? I'm really good with 3D. I'm very good at like tedious, minute stuff. And I think the really great thing about it was the one thing that I did tap into was that, like when I joined this team, I was like, this is really challenging. How am I ever going to do this? Kind of was the same mentality I had as a teenager, which was, life is so challenging. Being an artist is so challenging. How am I ever going to do this? And when I think back about the drawings and the 3D sculpts I did when I was younger versus where I am now, you could not have told me at that time in my life that this is where I would end up, let alone make things that would be what I was doing back then, and people would love it. So that was the one thing that I think I found that I loved about this project so much was kind of like what Tiffany was saying. Like, back then, people would be like, this is really ugly. And my kids even walked in and would be like, Mom, this is really ugly. But, you know, the fact is that they're not. You you know, they're just different.
Yeah.
There's a beauty to asymmetry and breaking the rules and finding how to merge all that together. And I think that was one of the great things about this movie.
Yeah, like when I first came onto the project, I was just, you know, Jeff was really encouraging me to be myself and draw how I draw. And I already draw really loose, and it's been, you know, compared a lot to high school drawings or like something naive. For me, it's just really instinctual. It was actually really funny, like entering the animation world around the same time, meeting people in animation, and them telling me like, it's so cool how you like draw like you don't know how to draw. You know, like these weird backhanded compliments, and I'd be like, yeah, thanks. But you know, we embraced that look, and you know, like it's like I said, for me, it's kind of a natural state of mine. I think being too conscious of wanting to draw mediocre, it feels kind of forced. I don't know if you like ever like force yourself to draw like a kid. It always comes out a little like unnatural. So you just kind of gotta like follow your gut instinctively when it comes to a movie like this.
I mean, did you all feel like you were making something special and sort of outside the realms of normal animation?
Yeah.
As a modeler, absolutely. Like, when developing the characters, I was like, man, all those classes I took, just down the toilet, because none of them taught I mean, it's just like, yeah, foundational, but like, I have to break so many things in order to make that work. Even the way I just used ZBrush, and I just surrendered with ZBrush, and everyone's like, you're not gonna do it in Arnold? I'm like, I don't have time to do it in Arnold. These need to be flat and quick and very, very not polished looking. And so like, yeah, for me, I had just rolled off, what did I just roll? A very cute movie too, for that fact, where everything was symmetrical and all the eyes are really big and pretty and the noses are cute and small and, you know, make sure that it's a triangle, you know. But then I get Woodrow's drawings, and it's just like, no, none of that. It's like, oh, this eye needs to be 2 inches higher than this eye. The shoulder isn't placed correctly, and it's all intentional. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was the tightrope. I mean, we keep saying that we're trying to make things ugly, but it's a tightrope of like I think Jeff mentioned, it's high art, like low brow or something, and we've all been kind of trained and we know what looks good, but it's tapping into just having fun with it and not really being bounded by these rules. So it still, to us at least, looks amazing. Like the boards were amazing and really inspired us to create drawings that would you know, honor them, and it was always that type, like, this looks really ugly, but we love it. Like, it looks really, really good ugly, you know?
Yeah. And not only that, like, Woodrow's drawings may look flat, but I can attest to it because I had to build them and I had to test it. They worked in 3D. So it was just like, yeah, you do see Superfly's arm, it's massive and gigantic, but it works. We actually made, so it's like, yes, everything looks really, really, you know, skewed and out of proportion, perspective, and ugly, and you name it. But the foundations are still there, and I think that's what makes it that high art you were talking about today. It's like, I would not say like a teenager could be able to draw without knowing these foundations. You gotta know those things first.
The turtles are pretty cute.
I have one more thing. I guess coming onto the project, what made it very unique as well is like, for most big studios, executives have their hands in every decision, and they're like, this is how you make money. You make the film like this, and we're gonna really like push the envelope. And then everything comes out the same, and we've seen it before. And coming onto this project, it felt like we were just artists treated as artists, being able to do what we were hired to do, and the executives kind of, at least from my position, felt like they were very just off to the side waiting for us to show them what we did, and we were just like kids in art class making whatever and having fun, which is what Tiffany was saying, like fun was implemented in this film, and I think like that was a very unique place to be, considering that this is like overseen by Viacom and Paramount and Nickelodeon, like these huge corporations, and they're like, yeah, just make a fun film, use this IP, come back and make something badass. So it was cool.
Are you all coming back for the second one? Do you know yet? Knocking on wood.
It depends. I mean, everyone's, you know, like they get story on first, and then
Right.
so.
Woodrow's keeping awfully quiet down there. Adam. I think we have time for a few audience questions. If you want to just raise your hand, I'll call on you and then repeat it so everybody can hear. Yes, right here.
Hi. So, as an artist working in animation, I can skip that, sorry. As an artist working in animation, I'm so thrilled by the things that you guys seem to have learned over the course of making this film, and like learning to break the rules that you kind of were taught. I know that there's a lot of like learn the rules before you break the rules, but what can someone who's starting on in their career kind of take from what you guys learned while making this to start thinking of art like this and think about making more art like this, if you have suggestions?
Did everybody hear that, or do I need to repeat it? Everybody heard it? Okay. Rules and how to break them.
I mean, I would just say don't be afraid to push things farther than you think they need to be pushed. Just try. That was the thing that I ran into. I mentioned it earlier about perspective and looking at a 2D drawing and going, well, that's not correct, and it didn't matter. So just push it further.
Sometimes you don't need to know all the rules, I would say. I mean, you should know some rules to break them, but like, there were a lot of moments in this production where like, someone would point out, oh, well, normally we would do it this way, but I like how you did it this way, and I would just be like, oh, I didn't even know I was breaking that rule. So.
Yeah, I went down the animation route in a more conventional way. Went to school, and I had a lot of teachers who would tell me, so this is how animation works, and these are the characters that you need to design. These are the storylines that get you jobs, and all of it was false. Like, and not false, but it just, I think now with Spider-Verse and now with this movie and Puss in Boots and, you know, all these studios are trying to embrace like a hyper-stylized look. I think it's, now you get to really question these rules. Like, if it works for the movie that you're making, for the story, then it works. But it doesn't necessarily have to work for another story that you're working on. So I think now is just an exciting time because you can start to really define those own rules, and they shouldn't be homogenous. Like, not like if we copied Spider-Verse, like I don't think we'd be at this panel. Like, I don't think the movie would matter.
I've only seen the first Spider-Verse like one time too. I was like, it's great. It's a great milestone in animation, and it broke a lot of boundaries and like rules and what could be an animated film. But you know, that's just one film. I feel like Puss in Boots, our film, they all look a lot different from each other.
In the middle here, sir. Yeah.
I was curious if you guys go on to make all sorts of other movies in the future, or maybe that different studios, if this movie is like reprogrammed, like they would approach movies in different art styles. I'm sure you're beholden to directors still, obviously, but like, has this method having to approach concept and modeling in the future?
Has this movie specifically changed how you approach projects in the future?
Not necessarily for me. I work directly with the production designer and the director. My job is solely to do what they want, like just to bring their vision to life. So for instance, with Jeff, he was the type of director where it was just like, here's your drawing, and it was just one drawing, and it's like, make it. That's it. All right, and so I would get to that drawing as close as I humanly possible. Then there are directors who are like, here's your inspiration. And then I really want it to be shorter, but the arms need to be this way. And it's like, it gives you a lot more, they give you a lot more creative liberty, but those present their own challenges because you're trying to find what they like. I think the one thing I will say that I do take away with me is the technical tools that I learned while working on this production, like making everything so planar, sharp edges, curves. I can't undo it. Now, like every sculpt I do, I'm like, I want to put these curls all over them. So those things are definitely stick with me.
Nikita?
Sorry, I haven't replied. So I think something I took away from this production, because earlier before I joined this movie, all the production I worked on is like very conventional, right? Very clean edges, very graphic. I actually work on Turtles, previous Turtle from The Rise of TMNT, which is a completely different style. So I think through working on this movie really challenged me to see things differently. Like it's not always has to be clean, and the things we learn from other production, like have to be perfect with the perspective and everything like that. So I remember something very clear is I struggle with learning the style of this movie. And Yushar, the production designer, was like, why don't you try draw with your left hand? I'm like, okay. I think that helped me to be more loose and not so focused on, okay, how to make these things look perfect, because that's not a purpose for this movie. So I think that really helped me to, and also push me and reminds me in the future production to constantly think outside of the box and not just like following certain way. Of course, like different movies have different style, but it's something that I will carry on with me whatever production I will be on next time.
Okay, this weird man to the side.
Mostly afterwards, I would say. There were a couple characters in the film that got cut where we had a sort of a loose idea who they were going to be, and I was asked to like draw someone that looked kind of like that voice actor to sell them on the idea. But for the characters in the actual film, yeah, they were all cast afterwards.
I think when they were cast, it changed more of the story and their dialogue more than the actual designs, right?
Yeah.
How about in the back, sir? Yep.
After working on the movie for so long and being so close to it, when it finally came out, was there any character or moment that you were surprised that people really loved or were crazy about?
It's a great question. Were you surprised by any of the characters that ended up being the fan favorites?
We all like Mondo.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
As a star from the beginning. Okay.
That was guaranteed.
I don't think it's a character thing, but there's a lot of like very dialogue heavy jokes in our film, and some of them were very like obscure or like very oddly specific. There was like a joke for Mark Ruffalo, and I think every time we had it in the animatic, no one laughed. Like probably because we've been working on it for so long, but I've seen it probably like 3 or 4 times now, and people were dying at a Mark Ruffalo joke, and every time they laughed, me and my fiance were like, really? You guys are laughing at the Mark Ruffalo joke? It's like one of those weird ones where like this joke is playing really well, like way better than it ever played in any of our like in studio screenings, so that was always a surprise.
Right here.
I had a question about your guys' personal experience in breaking into the industry, because I I'm currently a student at Art Center, and I'm going to be graduating this term. And with the industry really dry right now, it's obviously one of our biggest worries. Some of the teachers, I had this one teacher who is kind of the face of the entertainment industry, and he would tell me that how I was approaching going into the industry wasn't going to get me a job, and I changed a lot of my curriculum to the things I was interested in and things I wanted to study. So even though I want to be a biz dev and character designer, I also took liberty to like take typography and some other ways, and this teacher was really discouraging and telling me that like I wasn't gonna get a job this way. So I wanted to know your guys' personal experience, like
Yeah, the question was about sort of just breaking into the industry and what the advice would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and I know it's a daunting, thing to think about as you're approaching the industry. I think it's getting more popular. I think, right, like wanting to get into animation and work in movies. But I think, at least for our movie, a lot of us are kind of like alt, right? Like Woodrow has never worked in animation. A lot of our artists also, animation or movies. Some of our artists came from games. Some of them came from straight up just illustration and broke into it. And I can't say that about every movie or production or studio, but I think now the trend is like after Spider-Verse, every studio is going to be like, we want to make the next Spider-Verse. And that can't be done by hiring the same kind of people who do the same kind of art. I think a lot of us on this table and in our team stuck to our guns and really like discovered what we ourselves love. I went to Art Center too, and on my grad wall, I didn't put a single thing that was given to or assigned by teachers, because everyone else was doing it, and I thought, unless I'm like incredibly skilled and the best one out of all these other artists, then I'll be noticed. So instead, I kind of pivoted and was like, what do I like? I really like environments that feel real to me and feel observed and grounded. And maybe they're boring, maybe they're not a fairy tale, kind of storyline or whatever. But that was one of the reasons why Mike Rianda from Mitchell's hired me. And he told me, he was like, it was so refreshing to not see a spaceship or, not see something that you see over and over again. And that's not to, put people who do that down. It's just, it makes it so much more difficult if you are like one strong in a haystack. But how did you guys break into?
That's great.
I think this also probably for me ties back to that first question, which for me, I think my advice would just be focus on what is interesting to you. The teacher is probably well-intentioned in telling you to change what you're doing to, get a job. But I think from most of our experiences, probably what got us a job and continues to get us jobs is to make things that we're interested in, things that we want to see. And I think if you're altering what you want to do, and this isn't a guarantee that, you'll find your audience, but I think doing something that you're interested in and focusing on that to get the best possible version of what you want to do is my advice. Is that's what I would recommend doing, because I think if you're altering your, your portfolio, or if you're changing what you're even focusing on because of your teacher, even if you did get a job, you wouldn't be happy, and then eventually, you burn out because you're struggling to make art that you don't like anyways. So I think the main advice here for me is just not necessarily be like, fuck you, you don't know what you're talking about. But
Sorry.
no. I'm just that's generally how I've gotten my jobs, where I'm like, I don't like this, and I always focus on what I don't like, and then I'm like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. Here's what I think is fun, and then because of that, eventually someone said, hey, I liked what you do, and then that was the way I broke in. Yeah.
So I want to also add on something. So I also graduated from Art Center, and I have experienced the curriculum, and it's very focused on getting job, and not that much encourage you to be who you are as an artist per se. When I got in on the turtle production, actually I had experience working on I had portfolio from animation that working as a visual artist, but when I got hired, it was a very personal piece I had in my portfolio. I never thought it's a full piece of art. And Yusha, who was the PD on the movie, saw that piece. He specifically pulled out that piece from my website. He was like, oh, this is something we want to explore for. And that's how I got on the film. So I think getting in the industry, I did have a very art-centered portfolio, which is like a lot of like three-quarter drawing, like line art work heavy. But getting onto this movie, it was that personal piece that I did, and I never thought somebody will be interested. So yeah, I hope that can help you a little bit to find your way. And also, even it's a really downtime of the industry, and generally speaking, it's always gonna be like this, because that's the nature of like economy and our industry. But I would say we are also at a really exciting time, because like Tiffany, like artists said, there are so many cool movies out there exploring different things, and I think it's very encouraging to be yourself in some way at this time in the animation industry. So I'm very excited to see what other studio and what other artists are doing coming up. So yeah.
I was just gonna add, so I'm probably one of the older ones in this production, and I have done it over in Center. So I've been in the industry for about 20 years now, and one of the things I wish somebody had told me when I was younger was that this is like the prime of your life. This is a great time. I know that animation is dry and it seems so difficult, but I'm telling you right now, it's just like, this is your opportunity for you to expand and try things you've never tried before. Yes, I know it's easier said than done. We have to eat, we have to pay our rent and stuff like that. So trust me, I've been there. But your opportunities, try Paris, try South Africa, try Bogota. There's all these studios all around the world that want young talent, that are eager to have young faces and young ideas. Much easier to get into those places than the quintessential DreamWorks and Disney. And those studios may seem really, really great to get into, and they are, but you don't grow and flourish as much as my experience, the smaller studios. One of my favorite studios I ever went to was Animation Lab all the way in Jerusalem. Like, no one in their right mind was taking that job, but it was so much fun. And I got a chance to work with people from all around the world. So I know it seems here it's really, really dry. And in some ways, LA is just facing its struggles of like, there's a lot of strikes. Yeah, there's strikes. And I'm 100% with these people. They are asking for what is right. But in the meantime, don't get discouraged. It's a great time to try things that you've never tried before, and even apply for places you've never applied before. Talent takes you, and my last thing I will add is talent takes you so far, but a great personality takes you so much further. You could be the most talented person in the room, If you suck at working with, nobody is going to want to work with you. Trust me on that.
This is true. Work on your people skills, everyone.
And yes, thank you guys so much for being here.